Good evening, everyone. Good evening and welcome to Meeting 5 of the Central and Northeast Area Middle School Boundary Study. Invite everyone to please take your seats. Committee members at your committee tables and observers are welcome to be seated at the tables marked for observers. We'll be getting started in just a few minutes. A few quick reminders. Please take note of our emergency exits to the right in the event of an emergency, such as a fire alarm sounding. We will be exiting the way you came in or at any of the marked emergency sections. You may also exit to the front and to the left. In the event of an evacuation, we will reconnoiter back in the parking lot and compare notes to the sign-in sheets. So please make sure, committee members, that you've signed in on the sign-in sheets and observer members on the blue observer sign-in sheets. Masks are optional in BCPS at this time. We do ask that you respect everyone's personal preference for mask use and for social distancing. All the materials presented here tonight, including all the previous videos, materials from previous meetings, are all available on our website at www.bcps.org. If you click on the resources button at the bottom of that page, there's a link to the Central and Northeast Area Middle School Boundary Study. Again, we'll be getting started in just a moment. Ready to start?
Yep, I think so.
Okay. With that, we're going to hand it off to Matt Cropper with Cropper GIS. Thank you all for attending tonight. And just one last reminder, please, for the sake of our audience on the live stream and our friends here there with BCPS-TV, please make sure, committee members, if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand to be recognized and come up to use one of the microphones. It's really important that we capture your audio for the folks joining us on the live stream. Thank you very much for coming. We truly appreciate your participation in the process.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you all for coming back, committee and observers. We hope that you guys had a good little break over the survey period. But tonight is the night that if you guys are ready as a committee to vote on a recommendation, tonight will be that night. And so what we'd like to do is give you an overview on the survey results. And as you know, we sent you the survey results in advance because there was a lot of information in there, a lot of good feedback and a lot of good constructive input that was provided by the public, which we really appreciate. So we're going to review that, and also we've got a new option that's a modified option that we're going to preview to you tonight. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that and give you some time to look at that in your small group work. And then we're going to go through a process of nominating options for recommendation, and then get into the voting process. Okay, so let's dive right into it. Here we are at our last meeting. We've got, this is our final meeting on the schedule. And after this, after recommendations are finalized, basically the process is in the hands of the board. It'll be recommended to the board on May 2nd, and then there will be a board hearing on May 17th, where any member of the public or anybody can go talk to the board about their thoughts about any of the recommendations or the boundary change process. And then the decision will be made in June. That's when the board will vote on a plan on the recommendation. So the board has the ability to make changes to the maps or make any modifications to the recommendation. Nothing's final until the board approves a plan. So just a quick recap, why we're here, why we need to do this. There's a new middle school that's being constructed in this area. That's anticipated to open in 2024-25 school year. And then also Pine Grove Middle's being expanded slightly, and that's opening in December of 2024. We are also looking at balancing utilization and capacity among schools in the region to help relieve overcrowding, and then also accommodate the strategic plan that for the returning ESOL students back to their home schools. So that's part of our task. The study area, I think we've covered that pretty well. We all know what region we're working with. It's been on all of our maps, and so this is the area, assuming that any student in this area could be impacted, although we're trying to minimize the impact try to move as few students as possible while accomplishing our objectives. Talked really bit about that already. Looking at our rules, just to recap on our rules, and these are basically the rules to follow when you think about making an adjustment. Are we adhering better to these rules, or are we moving further away from them? And the best plan is going to be one that touches on these as a whole as best as possible. And they are to make efficient use of capacity in schools, maintain or increase the diversity among schools to reflect the diversity of the region and the school system, maintaining continuity of neighborhoods, impact of transportation and walkability and pedestrian patterns, trying to minimize the number of times any students are reassigned, be mindful of long-term enrollment trends and things like that, feeder patterns, which we've talked a lot about in this whole process, and you guys are pretty well aware of that, and then using things like geographic features, roads, creeks, railroads as dividing lines, if at all possible, and then again the ESOL strategic plan, and be mindful of that. So talking about the public information session and the survey, we really appreciate the output, the people who turned out at the meetings. We had a really good turnout. I think we had about maybe 350 or so people total show up at both meetings. And so a really good turnout, a lot of good constructive feedback. There was emotion that I think you all felt, but there was also constructive input, and people were talking about adjustments to make the maps better with mind on our rules and our considerations. So we had 2 of those on the 8th and the 9th, and we had the online survey that went from the 8th to the 19th. We had 2,737 total respondents to the survey, so a very good amount of input provided from people from across the entire study area. So very good results, and we were happy with and appreciative of the public and your involvement in coming out and giving us your input for the committee's benefit. One of the things with the survey, just remember to utilize it as another piece of information, another tool. You don't always have to have it be the deciding factor for you on which one you want to vote for. We always tell the public to give us their input as it relates to where they live, and they do that. And like I said, they've given us a lot of good constructive input, but just don't use it solely as the basis for your decision. Make sure to look at the data and the statistics and all the other information, relying with focus on the rules and considerations. So looking at the survey results, we asked them what was their overall viewpoint towards an option. And we had over 60% of the respondents chose option A. They either liked or were strongly in favor, as over 60%. You could see the other options, B, C, and D, did not have, none of them got over a 50%, or they were much smaller percentages in terms of those that said they favored the option. And it was interesting to see that the option A was the input, people who favored it. It wasn't just one community or one school. It was pretty balanced across the whole study area. So there was a lot of good input and favorability towards option A. And then likewise, there was C and D received over 50%, 58 and 59% opposed C and D, and then B had 40% who opposed. So it was much more divided crowd with the B, C, and D. A was clearly the popular favorite from the public as it relates to the maps that were presented and shared with them at the public information session. When asking them also what was their main reason for supporting a map, and they said the main reasons were maintaining neighborhood continuity and addressing current overcrowding. Some of the concerns of those who are concerned about an option or opposed to an option, we asked them why were you opposed to it, and they felt like it divided existing neighborhoods and also disrupted school feeder patterns. And so I think you've heard a lot. I know all of you as committee members have had conversations with public around the maps, and you probably understand, and that's certainly what I was hearing at the meetings when we were talking with members of the public. So tonight we've got 5 maps. So we're bringing back all 4 that we presented to the public, A through D. Those have not been changed. but we're bringing back an option E, and this is just really a suggested map that, that has been developed based off of feedback from the public and input that you guys have been providing through the course of the study. And so E is a modified map that makes the best attempt to try to address concerns and input from the public, and try to maybe see if we can build something that may be even better than the 4 that you had been considering up to this point. But remember, everything is draft. Nothing's final. You guys are the team or the group that is in charge of recommending an option, and so your recommended vote will be what is taken to the board. It's not anybody else. It's fully up to the committee to determine what we want to take to the board for consideration. So we've got all the data's online now. You guys have 8.5 by 11 maps in your packet, and also all of the statistics for option E are in there. And then also we have large plot maps of option E online as well as in front of you for your review. Let's talk a little bit about E. I'll talk a little bit about some of the specifics just to so you understand how it was built. We built option E off starting with A. So we started with A, and then we made adjustments right along the Ridgely-Cockeysville line. There was a couple small planting blocks that were causing some small splits that you guys picked up in some of the later maps. We carried those through in option E, so that's been fixed. We also fixed a small split that was Halstead Academy had 1 student that you guys identified a while ago. We captured that and picked that up also in option E and resolved that split. The Riderwood community was talking, had a lot of comments about the area that we moved from Ridgely to Dumbarton. And we did that originally to try to resolve an elementary to middle school split, so all of Riderwood would feed into Dumbarton. But what happened with doing that is that we created a very small split from the middle to high school. And so what we did and what we were suggesting with that is to keep that Riderwood community, those planting blocks north of 695, in Ridgely, and that gives it a much better balance for elementary, middle, and middle to high school for the feeder pattern splits. We also moved an area down in Rossville Elementary School, and this is input provided by the public as well as just review of the maps. There was an area just along 95 that in Rossville that we extended the line for the new middle school across 95, and you'll see that on the map, and sent those from Rossville to the new middle school. And that actually made the balance split from Rossville even better, and also addressed proximity concerns with members of the public who were talking about that being so close to the new school and that maybe that should be considered to go. One of the adjustments that we also made that you'll see was there was an area in Lochraven. When we pulled Riderwood back out to Ridgely, Dumbarton got a little low. They got below, just a little below 80%. They were in the high 90s. So we picked up a comment that a committee member, maybe 1 or 2 committee members made about moving an area from Lochraven to Dumbarton. And so that's the area that we have listed here, this Fellowship Forest and Greenbrier communities west of Goucher go to Dumbarton. So you'll see that on the map. Goucher is a busy road. As you guys had discussed, it's not one that students want to walk across to get to Lochraven. And so that is an area that was moved to Dumbarton to try to bring up Dumbarton's numbers and balance out the utilization in the region. So that's the extent of the option E changes, and we'll give you time to digest that and look at that and see what you think, if maybe there's any other adjustments or anything else that should be done. Like always, we've got our tables, our data that shows now option E is included in there. Utilization percentage, so now we have all of them A through E listed. And you'll see that there's really good balance of utilization in these. The numbers are really looking good in terms of the balance that are being provided. Option E, demographics, and looking at the demographic percentages, it looks like in most cases, the demographics are drawing closer to the average, although we're not able to make things perfectly balanced, right in line with the study area averages. They do draw closer in most cases to the average, and so there are improvements in terms of providing more diverse environments in schools, with option E and with a lot of the other maps that you have considered as well. Impacts, you can see option E impacts 1625. Now it's number 2. The lowest impact was 1529, so making those other adjustments bring option E to 1625. So still under 2,000, which the C and D was well over that, and B was at almost 1,900. Looking at the splits, you can see with option E, we do bring the split, we resolve some splits from A. So you see built off of A, we resolve some of these splits here. And we also resolved a middle to high school split. And so there's an improvement in the splits, much better than what the current maps have in terms of the overall numbers of splits and the balance of splits. You guys have done a really good job in getting these much better balanced and more equitable in terms of the splits. Nobody's impacted in terms of walkability, so that's really kind of a non-issue for us here. And then there's somebody from the equity team wants to cover this slide. Hi, good. Hi.
Good evening. My name is Jen Aldlin, and I am the Central Zone Equity Specialist from the Department of Equity and Cultural Proficiency. I'm here with my colleague.
Hi everybody, my name is Yasmin Davis. I'm the Central Office Specialist in the Department of Equity and Cultural Proficiency.
So in debriefing the last meeting, we talked to the team about making sure that we highlighted this slide, which was in the initial session that you had. Session 1, if you go back, you'll see was, I don't remember the number, but the exact slide was in there. And we wanted to make sure that this was something that as committee members and you were down to making your final decisions, that everybody's voice is heard and that you were all able to put everything you need on the table, especially knowing that we started with this, but this is our last scheduled meeting. And so that said, as you are talking in your committees tonight, we have all of this input from the public. We have an additional map to look at to think about the perspectives that are sitting at the table, the things that are being shared, maybe some of the perspectives that aren't there. How do you create enough room for all those voices of the input you're getting, as well as the voices that are right here? How are you making room for those?
And it also thinks about the considerations for diverse stakeholders and making sure that as you are thinking about what to do next, that you're making sure that you're anchoring it in the needs of those diverse stakeholders.
If you refer back to slides 7 and 8, that highlights the primary and the secondary considerations when making these decisions. So there's a lot going on. You're going to have all these different perspectives, like I said, voices that are here, voices that aren't, commentary from the public. But at the end, as you are weighing all of those things, having this discussion, there are 2 parts that are primary considerations. Those are listed on slide 7. And then there's a whole other list of other things that are secondary considerations. So weighing those priorities of the system is important as you are making your decisions and voting at the end of the evening.
And we're all here because we're passionate about it, and we really want to hear your perspective. And we can't hear your perspective if you don't speak from your perspective. So we're encouraging you to lean into using I statements so we can honor and acknowledge the space that you're in. And we really want you to use that so that when conflict comes up, whenever you're feeling that, we want you to lean into it. We want to hear from you.
And then the last piece, this is kind of an odd one to say as we are at our closing meeting, but to remind everybody that there isn't always closure on all these things. So we are looking at moving over 10,000 students, or the movement of 10,000 students and what that is. This is a tall task, but representing the interests that have been heard and then adhering to this, as well as the considerations that we've asked you to take on as committee members. You may feel like there are a few things left open. That is part of the process. And that is why we continue to repeat this process and take things into consideration and have, other opportunities for feedback. So thank you. Yasmin and I will both be kind of joining in and providing support. And if you have a question or something's coming up and you could use our assistance, please just kind of wave us over. So thank you. Anything else?
And remember these norms and expectations as you are having your conversations. We hope that these anchor the conversation so we can have a really enriching experience together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So does anybody have any questions before we let you break into your small groups, before we let you take a look at the new map and maybe just have start to gather your thoughts around maps that you may want to consider for a recommendation? Yes, ma'am. Could you come to the microphone?
Hi, guys. So one of the things that was brought up in a lot of the conversations I've had with people post-survey is that, oh, look, this one community rallied 500 people to respond and this other school only got 17. And one of our lovely community members is like a doctoral level survey statistician, and she put together a data set that kind of weighted every school's, however many responses you got were weighted equally. And with that weight, I'll put it over here if you didn't see it, and if you're not on any of these Facebook groups or whatever, I'll put it over here for you to look at. But it basically, no matter if you had 500 or 17 respondents, the results looked about the same. No map, the only map that got really well received was A, even accounting for that disparity in the amount of surveys that were collected.
Yep. We have some copies here if you want to.
Yeah, I just think that's an important consideration.
Okay. So now's our time. We're going to let you guys break into small groups. You've done this 4 or 5 times already. You know what to do. Just kind of try to think through the options, and then we'll only give as much time as you need, and then we'll move on to the next phase of the meeting. So we'll let you get to work.
I'm on the blue group.
Chris. Yeah, we just take the machine and then this wall right here. Okay, I think we're gonna, it looks like we're mostly ready. It looks like the committee is pretty much ready to go. So we're gonna go ahead and regroup and talk a little bit about our next steps here, leading towards a recommendation. Does anybody, like, let's see, I know you guys had some good conversations. There was a new map that you guys were looking at. Does anybody want to provide any input regarding some of the conversations they had? Anybody, you want to go first? Sure. Let's have the red group. Red group can come on up.
All right, so I told you before we had a quantitative data nerd, and I'm currently a qualitative data nerd. So I did a qualitative analysis of all of the feedback on the comments sections from the survey. There were 551 PB mentions, and I can't remember how many population block as mentions. But anyway, we felt that Draft E really addresses the bulk of the conversation that's been had about a lot of the kind of outlying pockets of population blocks. It also puts all of Golden Ring at the new middle school, which was a really big priority for some of the people that I talked to at the 2 talkbacks. And it keeps communities together. Capacity relief is given to Perry Hall Middle. I know all of the thing is Perry Hall Middle needs capacity relief, Perry Hall Middle needs capacity relief, but when I had conversations with people, both in person and online, nobody wants to volunteer to contribute. So it's one of those things where it's really hard and you have to make some decisions. And I know there are some communities that probably won't love this, but I think it's not a hot mess. It's, I think at the end of the day, what we decided. So as things go, we felt good about this one, that it addresses the things without, this, at the end of the day, what I hate about these boundary study committees, this is my second, is that it ends up pitting communities against each other. And we're all sort of fighting for the same thing, which is our kids, So like, you hate that we have to come to blows. You hate having to be the person that has to make hard decisions. But I think we've made some tough decisions, but also listened to the community. So that's what I got to say. That's what I have to say. If anybody else from my committee would like to say anything, feel free.
Yes. Thank you. How about the blue group? You guys want to have any input you want to provide, or any feedback that you wanted to say from the results of your discussions?
I just really like how they...
Can we get you? I know. As soon as you say something, you have to come up to the mic. Thank you.
Just going over all the considerations and everything and kind of putting this map together, map E. I like how it goes together. There were some little areas that one side over here, one side, and they got swapped, and it just made more sense logistically and for neighborhoods and everything. So I really like what was presented tonight. I think it goes well.
Thank you. How about the green group? Anybody from the green group?
All right, so I have kind of a unique perspective as a parent of Parkville Middle, but also as a teacher at Parkville Middle. I came in with a lot at stake. And so although Parkville Middle's map didn't change a whole lot, I still understood the gravity of what was coming in for the rest of the central and northeast area. So as I came into it, to be honest, I was quite skeptical. I thought, oh yeah, Cropper and Baltimore County already got this joint figured out. It is somewhere, and I was really skeptical of it. And to be honest, I am walking away really feeling good about how this process worked. I think as a committee, we rocked it. I think that our drawing all over these maps and arrows and numbers and all this stuff going everywhere, Cropper really did a nice job, and the county did a nice job of answering our questions and kind of giving us new options to look at. And then coming in and seeing after the public opinion and talking with parents and things like that, I felt really confident that with option E, all of that public comment, all of the opinions that we took care of and analyzed as a committee came together really, really well with option E. So Cropper, well done. Committee, awesome job.
Yes. Yes, you guys have done a fantastic job throughout this study to just leave no stone unturned. So hats off to you guys for sure. Anybody from this central group want to provide any input or any comments on sort of summaries of your discussion or anything that you feel is important to note? We'll get you next.
So we looked at the differences between A and E because it seemed like E is overwhelmingly the right choice. And I'm really torn because while I feel I was at both of the public meetings, I talked to a lot of the parents. I'm currently a Ridgely parent and we're being moved in every single option. So I've taken a really hard look at the diversity and the farms and all those things and tried to look at it holistically at what's not the best necessarily for my community, but the whole area, district, I don't know what we call this, as a whole. And, you know, talking to parents, what I tried to, you know, talk to people about was what's always best for your community is not best for all these kids in this area as a whole. And what I don't like about E is there's a couple schools where the farms increases. And I realize like those numbers aren't 100% accurate, but when you look at how the numbers made sense to decrease capacity and, you know, we're reducing the number of splits and reducing the numbers of kids affected, they pulled kids from very dense, a lot of times low income housing and moved them into schools that aren't going to benefit from that. And the kids aren't going to benefit from that. And that's what I'm struggling with right now because like, you know, all these things I hear like home values affected, like I'm in that group, I get it. But like, I don't want our kids to be negatively impacted. I want everybody to benefit from that. And so that's like, as a parent and as a member of this committee, that's where I'm having a really hard time with right now.
Yes, ma'am. Do you want to comment? Hold it for you.
So we have option E here. We did like some of the stuff, the Goucher spit. We really like the Goucher spit for safety for Loch Raven. However, we didn't feel like Loch Raven increased. The diversity of Loch Raven was increased by not doing the half of Hampton going to Loch Raven. Because Loch Raven can't really grow in capacity. There's really no more room for housing development. So their max capacity is kind of stuck. So I feel like we should grow that footprint because they have so much to offer. I think it's just, we have to make, I'm sorry, but I feel like we have to rip the Band-Aids off and try to make some changes. And keeping Hampton and Ridgely doesn't feel like it's addressing that issue. Bringing Carroll Manor over to Pine Grove, I really felt would increase the diversity at Pine Grove, and I feel like just because you live in a certain area doesn't mean you get to dictate how the maps are necessarily drawn. We did keep your entire school together, so I felt like that wasn't really, keeping the kids together was important, so they kept the elementary school together. We like the benefits of the community relationships. For this one, we were concerned about the new high school splitting up the Rosedale Elementary School in E. It splits them in half. It puts this map also, splits them in half between Parkville and the new high school. We did think it was good for the Golden Ring School to all go to the new middle school. And we liked how the split between below Campbell Boulevard kept people at Middle River and not going to the new middle school.
I want to say something as well. So I don't know where you are, but the lady who was just up here speaking. I would say that I have a lot of the same feelings. Like I know you mentioned home, like property values. Like in the beginning of this meeting, you guys said, make I statement. So I'm going to take the time to make an I statement. Some of us move to certain places because that's where we chose to move. And if you are like right on the line of where a school may be, then yes, you think maybe you would get redistricted. But when you move into kind of far of an area and you have done that for whatever your particular reason, your family's reason is, it is a little hard to swallow to say, okay, now you're gonna have to go to, you're gonna pass one school to go way further to a different school. And so I just kind of wanted to support you in what you were saying, because I think a lot of people are feeling this way. I think that E did make some changes, and I do think, I like to consider myself a diverse person. I do think diversity is important, but I think we need to look at everything as a whole. And that was my thing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other committee members want to make any comments about some of the new map or anything that they discussed? Yes, sir.
So, can I make this higher? Otherwise I have to bend over. Okay. So, I share a lot of people's sense that E is probably the best way to go. And certainly feel like this process has worked pretty well. The one thing I also want to raise, however, is that people in this room may feel pretty good right now, but we have an ongoing thing that's going on in Baltimore County, which is called development. And we, and the Board of Education and BCPS, cannot control development. So a few years from now, we may all be back in this same process, because compared to other counties in Maryland, Baltimore County does not manage the rate of development in an adequate way in order to provide sufficient capacity, infrastructure for those new houses. This is a very serious problem. So what will happen is you build very quickly, and it's almost like an earthquake. The tectonic state plates build up until, okay, we have to have another boundary study. What we need, this is not something any of us can answer. Baltimore County can't, or Baltimore BCPS can't resolve this. Who resolves this is Johnny Oshevsky, Julian Jones, and the County Council. They need to step up and do their part, which is to implement the recommendations of the independent task force on the APFO task force that came out in 2020, that actually puts guardrails on the pace of development so that the county can build the infrastructure that's necessary in order to meet the growing population. The other thing that Johnny Oshevsky and Julian Jones and the County Council can do is implement meaningful developer fees. Right now, or in 2020 or 2019, the state of Maryland gave our county authority to charge development fees when there was new development. The legislation that the County Council passed in 2020 had so many carve-outs and so many loopholes and so many developments were grandfathered in that they projected it would not raise very much money at all. And indeed, it was reported last week that in the first 3 years, those fees amounted to $103,000. $103,000 to build new classrooms, to build new sewers, to build new roads. You know how much they raise every month or every year in Anne Arundel County? $30 million. So we need our county leaders to step up and do their part so that we don't find ourselves in this situation again 3 years from now.
Okay, any other comments from the committee? before we move on to our next steps? Okay, so I think what we're doing next is basically a process to nominate options. And so this basically is a process to determine which options you as committee members feel are viable for recommendation. And this helps kind of narrow down the field and doesn't put options up there that nobody may support or want to consider. This process also helps ensure that if any committee member wants to make a change to any of the maps, they can nominate a map with changes, and they can identify the changes they wanted to make, and then you can put that on the floor for nomination. So committee members all have the ability to nominate a map. Any committee member can nominate an existing option, or any committee member can nominate an option with any suggested change that they feel is better for recommendation, with the focus on all of our rules and objectives. If there is a map that has substantial changes, we'll have to determine if that map makes it to the floor and it gets voted on and it has a significant number of votes and has a substantial number of edits that we haven't been able to capture and summarize in data for you. We may have to have another meeting to make sure that we provide you with the accurate data so that you can make an informed vote. But that's only if there's substantial edits to any map that comes to the floor for nomination. And so anytime any nominated map, once any of you nominates one, we'll bring it up here and put it up and tape it to the walls just so that you can see what's being considered for vote, and then that will be what's on the floor for the next step, which is a vote. Anybody have any questions about that? So it's kind of like like a little bit of Robert's rules, but not quite. We're not doing Robert's rules of order. We're just basically doing a little bit just to see what may be a viable one that you guys feel is important. So at this point, yes, ma'am. Do you want to make a comment? Are you going to make a nomination? Okay, so yeah, so you can go ahead and start. Do you want to make a nomination of a map? Okay, so map E as it is one of the maps that has been nominated. No, we're not going to do any seconds because we don't want to get too deep into the Roberts rules. We just want to give everybody a chance to provide a map that they feel is viable for recommendation. So map E is on the floor for consideration for recommendation. Are there any other maps that anybody wants to nominate, or maps with changes that anybody feels like they want to nominate and have on the floor for consideration? Yes, ma'am. Option, say again? D? Okay. Map D. Okay, so we have map E and map D on the floor for nomination. Yes, ma'am. Do you have another map that you'd like to nominate? Okay, so you were suggesting a map with changes. So could you help me and maybe come up and point to the planning blocks so we can make sure we document it? And do we have like sticky notes or a flip chart or something? Okay. So did you say map D? Okay. Okay.
So it put B for like basically this area.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna write it down.
Yeah. We'll note the planning blocks for you, Mike. Yeah. Go ahead and write it down. And what about
32 too?
What are these?
And then this one she was in for playing about 227, 226, 232, 228, and 233 to Lock Raven.
Okay.
So D, but those areas moved to Lock Raven,
and where did 923, 924, 931 go?
931 to the middle river.
Maybe we'll let's bring another option D map up, and we'll just mark it. Let's mark it up. So let's get another D map, another D plot up here, and then you can just mark it up right on the map. Okay. You got it? Okay. Can you get that tape, Paul? Oh, look at that. It's just like sticking right to it. Until the air conditioner turns off.
This is a D version 1.
Okay, yeah, this will be D1. Okay.
That's pretty close.
Okay. And then just put your D-1 up here if you could. Okay. Okay, so just so that everyone's clear, what's been nominated as map, what we're calling map D1, and this is a map that moves. It's marked up on here. You could see it's moving an area that was presented in option B, I believe, that had this area of Ridgely to Lock Raven as a change to map D, and then also this area of down here to keep it at Middle River, which this is what it looks like in same as it looks in option E, I believe. Yes, in option E, and then this area right here going to the this area going to the northeast area middle. Okay. Okay, and then the other adjustment of Lock Raven to Dumbarton. So there's some couple of movements here. Anybody have any questions about this particular map? Yes, we can certainly have discussion about them. It's certainly ones that have been modified. So, what does anybody want to discuss D1 map since as it's been nominated? The planning block numbers? So, yes, and so that's a complexity because that's why I was talking about substantial changes may require another meeting because something with as many adjustments as this would require a reanalysis. We'd have to rerun the numbers and come back to you with the numbers. So we were thinking that what we would do is we would leave it on the floor, have a vote on these maps. But if this map becomes a top candidate, then we will have to have another meeting so that you guys can have good, solid numbers before you finalize a vote. Yes, so she was requesting, and maybe you could help.
Yeah, so I'm actually like, so this is from E as well, so not E actually. So this was the E map. So what the numbers I'm really changing.
Hold on 1 second, you come.
Sorry. So the numbers from E that I'm changing is just like the Lock Raven, this section here going from Lock Raven, from Ridgely to Lock Raven, and then this area from Carroll Manor going to Pine Grove. So it's increasing Pine Grove a little bit, and it's increasing Lock Raven back to the numbers from, I think it was C or B. Wherever these two maps are in one location, like this one here. The numbers for this one are in, I think, B.
But not with the Lock Raven moving to Dumbarton. We wouldn't have that combination with Lock Raven moving and Ridgely moving into Lock Raven, and then the Mays Chapel into Ridgely. That would require us to recalculate, but you can get a good feel from the other maps of what the utilization looks like.
Right. So this is from E right here. This is the E, and this is the E. So the only change I'm making is from the 5, 15, 9, 27, 18 going to Lock Raven.
For option D.
For option E.
Well, E also does not have this adjustment.
That's for the Pine Grove. I'm saying for the Lock Raven section, that it's only 5, 18, 25, 50, 75, 80 students going from Hampton to Lock Raven.
Okay.
So Lock Raven would increase by 80 students. And
Lock Raven still differs from E because there's this section here of Oakley that feeds into Lock Raven and D1. So it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more changes that are done.
Okay.
But so the committee member was asking for some of your thoughts on the rationale for the changes. Could you share some of that?
Okay. Yes. So the reason for Lock Raven is because Lock Raven has no more, there's no more room for development. So Lock Raven School really is not going to be able to grow capacity-wise by any significant number of students. So by bringing in this area, it helps to increase Lock Raven's population and give it a bigger footprint. Okay. This section over here, the area from 43 would remain at Middle River Middle. It also has a lot of development coming over there, and I wouldn't want to overcrowd Northeast with as many houses they're planning to build on Campbell Boulevard in Middle River. It's a huge development. They're already planning for that. Again, for this section over here, the Northeast school, the kids in Golden Ring staying at the brand new school versus going to the second oldest middle school. That's the rationale for this one. This one was originally from E. This is the originally mapped from E. So, because I took this section from Ridgely and put it into Lock Raven, I said you can take this part that's already in E, that's in E right.
It's E's over here, but yes, it is. E has been correct.
Over here to be at.
So then what happens to Cockeysville?
That's a question that I did not address yet.
Yep, that's fine.
Manor can stay at Cockeysville.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to include that as a markup as well? Leave it as a, okay.
Can I speak to that
Yes,
now?
sir.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So thank you. I'm a little bit dismayed, actually, at the end of this long process to have so many changes suggested. And we've had plenty of opportunity for us to raise these kinds of things. So on just, out of respect to the process, I would not feel comfortable about those changes. And just even superficially, I can imagine that this will create a lot more. We've had a lot of public participation so far. I think that would necessitate even a broader kind of public discourse. I'm not comfortable with these changes, and I don't think it would be wise for us. I think what I heard from you earlier was if there were tweaks and modifications, but this feels like introducing a whole new map at the 11th hour, and I just don't think that would be a responsible thing to do. And I could go into a lot of detail about nuance about some of the changes, but that's just not my responsibility. That would be a whole collective process. And if you want to open that door, we could do it, but we're all volunteers, and many of us are eager to get back to our life.
So yes, if this map does have a lot of favor from the committee, then it will be one that we'll evaluate and run numbers on, and then we'll regroup as a committee to consider it as part of a recommendation. Yes, ma'am. Did you want to make a comment?
Can we still nominate a nominee?
Yeah. Before you do that, I just want to make sure that the D1. Does anybody else have any comments about D1 before we move to nominate another option? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to go along with what he just said, but just looking at the survey results, option D was the least favored by the community and the area. So I think that does speak volume. I know people have their opinions on how the survey goes and everything, but I think that speaks volume of the community and the county in general and as a whole.
Any other comments about D1 before we open the floor for other nominations? Okay, I don't see any. Yes, ma'am, did you want to nominate a map?
I'd like to nominate option A.
Okay.
For several reasons. Number one.
Can you please come to the mic? Yes, ma'am, thank you. Option A has been nominated.
I would nominate option A for several reasons. Number one, it was the most strongly favored in the survey by the public. Number two, it was the original one we all kind of liked to begin with. And number two, it's close enough to E with some changes that it gives a viable option for what's best for students in maintaining the two things we're trying to do, which is keep our capacity, our school capacity, at a place where every school can grow and not be overcrowded, and then also maintaining or increasing the diversity. So at this point, maintaining is the only thing we can do with diversity unless we go big or go home. So option A was the original. It's the one most favored. I say option A should be on the board for vote for the Board of Education.
Okay. Thank you. Any other? Yes, ma'am.
I'm not that tall, so
She's just providing input.
all right. So if you know me, former math teacher, so I needed something tangible to look at the difference between A and E, right? Because they are super similar. So I started to look at numbers and trying to figure out, again, how each of us in this room defines diversity might be a little different. But the simple, straightforward, in 10 minutes tonight way for me to look at it was to look at farms data. So looking at farms data, comparing A to E. So again, you want to keep or maintain your diversity. So we're looking at changes. So I did a little bit of math. And in A, you're looking at a change in your schools, 0%, a drop in 8%, a drop in 3%, a drop in 2, a drop in 2, a drop in 4, an increase in 3, an increase in 1, a drop in 2, and a no change. When you compare that to E, you're looking at an increase in 1, a drop in 5, no change, a drop in 3, a drop in 4, an increase of 3, an increase of 1, a drop of 2, and no change. So I know I threw those numbers out really quickly, but E has less change in that demographic and that farms rate. And again, that's just one number, but it was a very quick and easy number to compare in our data. So that was a way for me to compare A to E as you're sitting and thinking.
Thank you. Yes. Do you have another comment? Or
Looking at those same numbers, if you compare A and E, I think there's only like 2 that are different, but again, I'm looking at it super quick, but just FYI.
yes, ma'am. You want to make another comment?
One more comment. A and E are the closest to the original borders for currently schools now. For the west side, the most change is happening to the east side of the county in options A and these options. I feel like it's all this change is being dumped onto the east side of the county, and the west side is not accepting any change, very little change to their zoning area by doing options E. So option E does not do much change to the west side of the county. It does most of the change to the east side, which this is a big boundary change, and I think we need to blow things up and change things.
There's more change to the east side because that is where the new school is being built.
Okay. So any other options that people want to bring to the floor, or options with changes? Last call for option nominations. Okay, so it looks like we have 4 options. Mike, I don't know, do we need to go back to the slides to talk about the voting before? Is there any way to do that, or is that not? Let's just talk, let's do this before we get to the vote. Let's just make sure we cover this.
Make sure we have a vote count of eligible voters. Eligible vote counter is 20.
Okay, so we have 20 eligible voters, not including principals, that are here to vote. So once the nominated options are identified, you're going to cast a vote. And so this is going to be vote on your recommended option, what option you feel should be recommended, the one option. And if an option receives more than 50% of the votes, that option will be the recommended option that's taken to the board. If there's not a majority vote on any option, then we're going to have to figure out what to do, maybe do another round of voting and try to build some consensus to try to build some consensus to have a majority vote among the committee. As I said always, the final decision in these changes is made by the Board of Education. Once this leaves your hand, all the hard work you've done, the board really appreciates that and honors that, but they do have the ability to make changes to that. But the recommendation is coming from you. And then there are additional opportunities for public input prior to the board decision. Like I said, the board hearing, and the board also has access to all the information, and we will, when we present the recommendation to the board, we will tell the story of how we got there and sort of the course of events, how it evolved and how we got there. So they're not just going to be looking at one map. They'll be aware of the evolution and how they got to the recommendation that we will present to them. So voting guidelines, like I said, principals are not eligible to vote. One scenario is being voted on, and then just really consider and make your vote based off of what's best for all children in this area. Consider the study goals in Rule 1280. And I think every voting person has a device now. Is that right? Anybody not have a device that is a voter on the committee? So I think we're covered there. All right, so I think we can go ahead and move to the vote. Okay. So here is the. So here are the options on the board. Okay. Now remember, these are the voting. The way the voted clicker is, it's A, B, C, D, but the option. So if you want option A, you would click A. If you wanted option E, you would click the B button. Okay. If you want option D, you'll click C. And if you want option D1, you'll click the D button. So does that make sense? Okay. Okay, no problem. So 21 voters now? Okay. Okay, any questions? If you're ready to vote, I think you can go ahead and cast your vote. Just make sure you do it as it's indicated on the screen here. We have them all. All the votes have been cast. Okay, drum roll. Here we go. Thank you. I see device 31 and I see device 31. Okay. If you have 31, okay. Okay, now drum roll. Okay. Okay. So 66.7% of the committee voted on option E for recommendation. That is the option that we will bring forth to the board for their consideration and approval. Like I said, we will talk about the deliberations and the discussions that were had at this meeting and leading up to this meeting. That recommendation will be made on Tuesday, May 2nd at 6:30 p.m. in the Greenwood building. And so that is, you guys are welcome to attend that. And you don't have to go as a committee. You guys have done a lot of hard work. We are so thankful for your time. But we would appreciate you there if you want to be there. Board hearing and board decision. Thank you guys all. Great work. Have a good night. Thank you.